I think a good place to start is this. Obviously, big news this week. You have formally announced you're getting into the governor's race. A lot of people have been waiting to see what you're going to do. You made it official this week.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful of your time, so let's dive right in.
Right.
There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in our state.
Mm-hmm.
From where you sit, what's the biggest challenge facing Georgia right now?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, Zach, and I appreciate you being here. I mean, challenges are always going to happen, you know, in the world of politics, the world of business, and just life in general right now. Obviously, Georgia's in a posture where we've had a really good run from an economic standpoint. We've had great leadership at the state level with, you know, not just Governor Kemp, who's done a great job, but had it with Deal and Governor Perdue and the legislative body as a whole. And I tell people all the time, you know, it's good, and this good, solid, common sense leadership that has helped Georgia be, you know, the number one place to do business, place that people want to come to move, to start careers, raise families, things of that nature. And those things don't happen by accident. I like to think that I've had a part in helping shape that. As my time in the state legislature as well as as lieutenant governor, and you know, I love the state of Georgia, and I'm, you know, born and raised here. I went to school at Woodward Academy in College Park, went to the University of Georgia, had been growing a business here in Middle Georgia, and you know, there's a lot of good things that I see that have happened, and I see a bright future for us, and that's the reason why I want to serve as governor, because I think I've got a good handle on, from a business aspect, from a legislative aspect, handle on where we've come from and where we need to go.
From a policy perspective and a legislative perspective, mm-hmm. If you're elected governor, what would be your number one priority?
Well, it's always about trying to, you know, create an atmosphere that is. Well, I like to talk about kitchen table issues. We get caught up, and I know the media likes to talk about things that divide us as in politics and individuals. But I like to talk about the things that, like lowering people's taxes. I'm proud of the fact that we've lowered state income tax 3 years in a row, and I want to continue to do that as governor. I'm also proud of the fact that we've done things to improve our education systems, giving teacher pay raises, but also passing school choice to give parents more options for their children. I'm a big law and order guy, and I think in order for you to have a good state to live in, you've got to have law and order. That's why I've always promoted, I've been tough on crime, as well as promoting pay raises for men and women who are in law enforcement. So those are some of the things that I think that are bipartisan issues, and I think that but it resonates with the average person out there.
I want to talk about one thing that you mentioned in your campaign launch video. We're taping this on Wednesday. You put that video and the announcement out yesterday
Sure.
On Tuesday. In your video, in your campaign launch, you said you want to completely eliminate the state income tax.
That's right.
As you know, Georgia law requires that the state pass a balanced budget each year. If you get rid of the state income tax, that's a big chunk of the state revenue that's going away. How would you pay for it?
You do it just like how we've been doing it. You know, you be very consistent, but you also conservative in your approach. We've lowered it in the last 3 years. The goal needs to be zero, but you want to do it in a responsible way. And there's we do the budget every year. We pass a balanced budget every year. We've been very fortunate where we have a huge surplus, a $15 billion surplus right now. I can remember when it was not anywhere close to that number. And so once again, those are things that you don't do it in 1 year, but you do it over time. And I think it's something that is attainable. And I think under the right circumstances, it's not like you'd be reinventing the wheel. You've seen other states do it. You know, Tennessee, who we compete with all the time, Florida, who we compete with all the time, they have no state income tax. Texas as well. Mississippi just passed in their legislature that they wanted to they're getting rid of theirs in the near future. So it's obtainable. The goal needs to be that, and then you work towards being responsible in how you do it.
On brass tacks, if you get rid of the income tax, do you think the state would then have to increase property taxes, sales taxes, something else to balance that out?
These are all things. The first thing that we would address is all the tax abatements and tax credits that we've been doling out for the last 20 years. Some have been beneficial, some have not.
Does that include tax credits for the film industry?
Well, I knew you were going to say that.
It's a prominent industry.
There's literally billions of dollars of tax credits and initiatives that we've been doling out for several years now, and we actually have a committee right now in the Senate that we're putting together that is looking at just that. You know, what is the best way for us to move forward on lowering the state income tax, and we're going to look at those recommendations and move forward on those.
And just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about potentially rolling back some of these tax credits.
Potentially rolling back some of the tax credits, yeah, that you look at. There's some, like I said, they're not as beneficial to the state because they don't provide the necessary jobs that they talked about, and they don't provide the economic impact that we anticipated them to do. So those are the easy ones, and you start with the low-hanging fruit first.
I want to talk about something you brought up earlier in our conversation. You said, you know, the media loves to talk about things that are controversial.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's because lawmakers are discussing controversial issues. That's part of the job of being a leader and elected official. The last time I think actually you and I spoke was the day that SB 1 was passing out of the Senate. That was a bill that you supported, and it banned access for transgender kids to girls and women's sports in the state. You've been a proponent of this. You said so in your campaign launch as well.
Right.
Many people agree with you. As you know, there are many others who have differing opinions on that. I want to ask you a little bit about the background of this, because we've heard so much about it this year in the presidential election as well. The NCAA president, Charlie Baker, back in December, he said that of the more than 500,000 NCAA athletes, he knew of fewer than 10 who were transgender. If that's how small this group of athletes is it worth all the legislative effort from folks like yourself and others?
Well, you know, fortunately we've got it passed, and for whatever reason it continues to be something that is talked at the national level. I know here recently the swimmer who's kind of the genesis of this conversation, when it was a swimmer that won, I believe, the national title, a male swimmer competing in the girls' sports.
And just to be, you know, they would push back on that. They would say they identify as a transgender woman.
I understand that. But I'm saying a male swimmer that won the female sport there at Georgia Tech. That's kind of the genesis of the effort. I think Penn has I think stripped that gentleman of his accolades that he had received while swimming as a female athlete, or portraying himself as a trans athlete, and those are things that. Like I said, you don't like to marginalize any one group of people, but at the end of the day, we were trying to protect women's sports, and it meant something to the females who that had been affected by it, and parents that we talked to about it too. So we were in the right by pushing SB 1.
I want to ask you about two more topics, but I do want to linger here just for a moment. Because there are going to be student athletes who hear you in this interview. There are going to be parents of student athletes who hear you in this interview. And just like on any topic, there are going to be a lot of different viewpoints. I'm sure some people watching this will think that, maybe they're a parent. Maybe they're a parent of a transgender kid in high school or middle school or college. And they hear all this talk and this legislation about kids like their kids. And they might feel like their kids are being called out and singled out by pretty powerful people in the state. Right. They might worry about it. What would you say to them?
Well, what about the parents of the female athlete that didn't make a team because of a trans athlete? So you got to look at both sides of the equation, and I'm like I said, I'm going to side with the female athletes. I'm a father, and I've got an athletic daughter. And I know how I would feel if for whatever reason she was deprived of making a team or winning an award because of somebody who had a unfair advantage over them.
Let's shift tax. I want to ask you about two different kind of buckets of questions here, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Sure.
You brought up tax credits, kind of looking at the state level earlier. There's been a lot of conversation nationally about electric vehicle tax credits that have been implemented across the country. There's been a lot of talk about it as the big beautiful bill has worked its way through Congress and now been passed into law. Georgia has been a hotbed of renewable industry development. Talking about the Rivian plant, there's a Hyundai plant, there are others across our state that have been real economic drivers.
Sure.
I know that some Republicans have been skeptical of the value of EV tax credits. Would you support their continued use in Georgia?
You know, the thing about, particularly, let's take Hyundai for instance. When they built that plant, they were smart in the fact that they built a plant that could manufacture not just electrical cars, but also hybrids as well. Now, I'm a free market person, and I believe that when the electric cars becomes, you know, the car of choice by the consumers, you know, that's when that industry will grow. And I think that I am for all forms of energy, but I'm definitely for energy independent as a country, and I think that's where we're headed under the Trump administration right now. I don't have an issue with electric cars. I always think that if it becomes the vehicle of choice, consumers will let you know about it. But I've always been a little hesitant about giving unfair advantages to industries. Just because it seems to be the sexy thing at the time to do, you know, and but we welcome Hyundai, and I know they knew that coming into this, why they created a manufacturing plant that had the ability to manufacture both hybrid and electric cars, because they're going to end up manufacturing the vehicles that they know that their consumers want.
I want to end here, and I know you've been asked about this before. You're going to be asked about it again as the course of this campaign goes on. Mm-hmm. Governor Brian Kemp and other state officials back in 2020, they certified the Georgia presidential election results for Joe Biden.
Sure.
After that happened, you were among a group of state politicians who signed a document saying that, in fact, Donald Trump won that election. Do you still stand by that?
What we actually did was we said we were trying to reserve their rights as far as the court systems were concerned. And we actually looked at previous presidential election in Kennedy versus Nixon, where something very similar happened during that election cycle, where the results in Hawaii were challenged by one of the I think it was Nixon at the time, and in order to reserve the right to be heard in court, you had to have a slate of potential electors. Like I said, we looked at Hawaii. Hawaii had done it, and in fact, in Hawaii, they originally said that Nixon had won. When in fact, when they did have a court case and they did review it and they recounted it, that it was reversed at the end of the day. So we weren't doing anything that had not been done before, and also we were always making it clear that we wanted a court case that had been filed and had not been heard in the appropriate time by a Fulton County judge, and because there is a time limit on that too that there was never talked about. So those things that, like I said, I know that's something that people like to point to, but when I was serving in the state senate, and we had plenty of people calling us that had issues on that day, and that's what we were looking into, is the issues that constituents were talking about.
And I know you were among a group of lawmakers who, this is according to AJC reporting at the time, were calling for a special session to come back in session, right, to look at this?
Yeah.
I know that Governor Kemp...
It wasn't just that. The special session was on the... we had two races that were going on. You had a United States Senate race that was happening, actually two of them at the time, and then you had a presidential election. And what we did was said, because the rules had been changed because of COVID, and we knew there was a runoff in the U.S. Senate race, what I was saying, along with others were saying, is that we need to go back to your regular rules for the runoff race. and so that we don't have all the drop boxes spread out all across the city. And then on the presidential says, review the claims that have been made. It never was about trying to reverse it, trying to call a special session. It had to do with the U.S. Senate race.
And I know this was sure. Just one last question here. Because I know it was 5 years ago now. It can feel like a long time ago and also short. There's kind of a time warp that happens in between these last 5 years. But it was a major moment in our state and in our country's history. You were a state senator at the time.
Right.
You're running to be governor now. As you know, the governor in Georgia plays a really critical role in certifying the results of presidential elections here. If you were in Governor Kemp's shoes in 2020, would you have done as he did and certify the results for Joe Biden?
I think what happened was as a constituent, you were concerned about what was happening with the people that said they were being turned away because they'd already voted and things of that nature. The Governor Kemp he was probably afforded more information than what I was, and given different information, it might have been the case. But at the end of the day, all we were doing was wanting the courts to review the claims that have been made. And once that time frame passed, there was nothing else you could do. So.
And just to make sure I'm hearing you right, because some people may hear your answer and think, well, that didn't quite get to it. If you were in Governor Kemp's shoes in that moment, do you think you would have certified?
There was no other choice but to do that at the time. There was no other choice to do that because, like I said, we were trying to reserve our rights in court, and the courts refused to hear it.
We've covered a lot of ground. I just want to give you the floor before we go. Is there anything you think voters should know that I haven't brought up yet?
No, Zach. I'm excited about running for governor. I've been, like I said, served as lieutenant governor, and I've had the honor of serving the people of Georgia. And I've taken, as you've mentioned, you're talking about taking on the establishment both on the Republican and Democratic side, and I always try to feel like that I represent what's in the best interest for the people of Georgia, and I am proud of all the work that I've done in the legislature. I'm proud of the business that I've grown here in the state, and and just look forward to the opportunity to earn people's vote here moving forward.
Primary day is what, 9 months away now? Fewer?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. It's gonna be a marathon. So yeah, it'll be fun, but it'll have some bumps.
It's coming fast. Lieutenant Governor, appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.